it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight on Rogue Ways, my beautiful friend is here to share with us how to see ourselves and our world differently, how to extricate ourselves even from the most enmeshed and entangled corporate mainstream lives, how to find meaning in a world gone insane, and how to work with humanity to heal what we all share of the great wounding. He is a married 47-year-old father of one homeschooled son who has lived in 8 U.S. states, has visited 20 countries, and he has sought sanity in an increasingly insane world. His weekly podcast, Chronic Conundrum, is a show which attempts to find the capital T truth through storytelling, social critique, and in-depth dream analysis. Join him on a schizophrenic sojourn where no topic is off limits and the soul presents itself for all to remember. Mark of Chronic Conundrum, welcome back, or just to Rogue Ways. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. You do such a great job at that.
Hey, I had your help with it, so yeah. It's a team effort.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to have you here today. I do want to shout out to the beautiful audience out there. Thank you for checking out my books on rogueways.org, on Audible, on Barnes & Noble, on Amazon, or anywhere else you want to find them. Thank you to my one-on-one spiritual and healing session clients. Thank you to those who go to the shop at rogueways.org, check out the orgone accumulators and more. And also to those free or paid subscribers on rogueways.substack.com. If you aren't one yet, you should be one. I hear actually that Mark has a Substack too. Maybe he'll share that with us as we go. And thank you all for being here and being you. Mark, the pointless question of the episode for you is, what is the best part about sleeping and dreaming?
Oh man, it is just the secret to life, I think. Since we're unconscious, paralyzed for a third of our lives, it just has an immense value to your waking life. I always say, man, if you lost a third of your income to something, wouldn't you wonder where that went? And yet with sleeping, nobody even talks about it. And so over the last couple of years, I've been tracking those dreams, and I have just grown immensely from it.
Yeah, this is a practice that I highly suggest everyone does if you don't yet. And I'll also say, I don't know what you think about this, but some people are like, well, I don't dream. And I'm like, bullshit. You just don't remember them yet. You can actually practice exactly what you're doing, Mark, just writing down what you do remember and what dreams you do have. And it hasn't your retention increased as you've gone.
Oh man. And it's a lot of work. And I also say, it's like, you can pay for therapy, you can pay for drugs and alcohol, or you can just get up in the middle of the night, roll over and write those dreams down. Yeah. It's invaluable. I've been doing it for about 2 years. I got over 200 dreams and I love it.
I love it too. You may know, people probably listening probably know I do teach dream walking. And so I teach people how to dream more, dream better, recall more, use it for analysis, psychotherapy, finding answers to any questions that we have about ourselves or the universe, even things that we don't think we can possibly know. And also connecting with, loved ones and even people who've passed away. Do you want to share with us any like choice dreams that come to mind, or is that crazy?
No, I love it. And I want to say from the onset that, this is a real kick, because last week I listen to your show every week. It's only one of 4 shows I listen to still, because
thank you.
I don't delve into the doom and gloom anymore. I've had enough of it. I want an upbeat message. I want positivity. I want a way out. And so I listened to your show, and like last week I listened when I cleaned the apartment. And, so last week I'm listening to your show, and this week I'm on your show. So it's kind of crazy. And I will say also, before I answer the question, that I did do your coaching and talk session. So if anybody's interested in that, it was wonderful. A wonderful way to talk about some really crazy stuff. And you don't have to worry about going to a therapist and worry about them being a mandatory reporter.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it. So thank you. And now you have to remind me of the question. I apologize.
Oh, any choice dreams that come to mind?
Lately, it's all been about sleep paralysis and the sleep demon dreams.
Yeah.
And so I keep, I have more, I would say, ordinary dreams, which of course are never ordinary, but the sleep paralysis and sleep demon dreams have been very, very interesting.
Mm.
And, if people have never experienced them, they're hard to describe. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, because you slip into an in-between world, I guess. For me, it happens early in the morning, and it feels like your inner ear loses its capacity to regulate yourself and balance yourself, and then you slip and fall into a paralytic state. And you sometimes struggle not to do that because it's terrifying. You can't move
Yeah.
anything and you're frozen in fear. And at times, and this isn't something I was cognizant of at first, but there is a presence in the room typically. And when I finally looked him up after years of having these dreams, because I'm like, who is that dude that's in these dreams? I'm like, what? Why is he there? And he's a trickster. And then when I looked up that, it pulled up sleep demon. And I was like, oh God, I don't even want to deal with this. If there's
Yeah.
a demon in my dream. But, over the last few months, I have come to a different understanding of that entity in my dreams. And so it has just been a really interesting process, I would say, over the last few weeks of coming to terms with who that person is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a profound experience, and it is so interesting. It happens to, I think the last time I looked, they were like, it's 10% of the population. So 1 out of 10 people
Mhm.
has had sleep paralysis. And then out of those people, it's like 10% of those people have had this encounter with this sleep demon, this being. My audience knows that I've had the encounters as well. And it's fascinating to me that we just sort of pass that on by. Like, we don't have more discussion about this or exploration of this. We're just in such a materialist, linear sort of thinking age, and this really profound experience. It has this potential to unleash spiritual skills. It has this potential to awaken you to a higher level of self. It has this potential to, cause some real shadow work, and integration of self with it is profound, right? And like you said, it's actually like it's free therapy. It's terrifying. It's always good therapy, though. If you're doing therapy right, it's terrifying. So
Totally.
right.
And if you're not doing therapy right, then you're in therapy for like 30 years.
Yes.
Like so many people I know. And I've tried therapy before, but it's like anything else in our culture, not to get away from the dream subject, but I'd rather have more sovereignty and autonomy and figure things out on my own. In the dreams, they package everything in such an amazing and brilliant way, and using metaphor to tell you exactly what's going on in your internal world and your outer world.
Yeah.
As long as you interpret them, and it's best sometimes to interpret them with a trusted source. And in this case, it's my wife. So every morning we sit down, and what a nice wife, where I'm like, you want to listen to my dreams? And she does,
Yeah.
And we grow. Go ahead.
Well, this is a cultural thing we've lost too, though, where I want to say in Scandinavian countries, it's more likely that you wake up and the whole family shares dreams and talks about them over breakfast. It's like a group therapy session, and the intimacy, the vulnerability, and also the self-awareness and the therapy that comes out of this is. I wish we could bring it back. So you're doing it. You're doing it right.
I do. We try. And my wife wasn't a dreamer until very recently. And our son, he doesn't really claim to have any dreams, but we work on it with him. And we, of course, divulge our dreams to him to encourage him to explore those realms.
How old is he?
He's 13.
Oh, okay. So he might also just be a little bit like, I don't want to share my dreams with you, you weirdos.
Potentially, yeah. I feel like there's some of that going on. But if my parents have ever asked me once about my dreams, I would have left it.
I know, me too. Let me tell you. Yeah.
It's just a different generation, I think.
True. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's cool. So let's talk about your son. You and your family. You guys were not always living the way you are, and you actually hail from I want to say like the most insane leftist culture I've ever been in, which is Portland, Oregon. And when I'm in Portland, Oregon, what I feel like genuinely is that I can't say or do anything unless it's like very, very in line with some highly leftist ideologies. Otherwise, I'm going to be attacked, shunned, dismissed, cut off from society. Like, it's such a controlled, haughty, judgmental place. So now that I'm done projecting my ideas onto Portland, how did you guys feel living there, and how long ago was that, and what happened?
Well, I agree with you. It's like there's Gestapo set up at the doorway of every business, especially during COVID. But I'll avoid this clunky exposition if I can. But I got to go back a little further. We're from New England, which is also a very strange place in a wonderful way, opposite of Portland, very, very opposite. So the first time I visited California as a 20-something, they did not like my brand of humor there. And it was very jarring to say like, okay, this is a different world, even though it's the same country. I had a relatively normal life. Right before I met my wife, I'm working in a corporate job in a cubicle, going to the doctor, wearing pleated khakis, wearing my Patriots jersey on Fridays because they let me at work, and hoping a meteor just like landed on my head, to end
miserable.
it. I didn't want to do anything about it, but if I saw a meteor coming, I would welcome it. And so a lot of people, I think, get caught up in that kind of paradigm. And then I met my wife, and she does not believe in the rules of reality, quote unquote. She's a Korean adoptee, one of those kids that was adopted out of Korea in the 70s, one of 200,000 kids. Wow. And by adopted, I mean trafficked. We've done a lot of research. So it's a big business. And there's a lot of horror stories. Hers was similar in that her mom was duped into giving her up. And, she was 3 years old and then came here, and they said, well, just tell her that she's an American now and she's lucky to be here. And literally, like her dad was taking a deli order, handed somebody a ticket, and they handed her a 3-year-old girl.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so when I met her, she just wasn't hearing anything about how I wanted to live. And so she really broadened our horizons, and she got a great corporate job that allowed us to move out of central New Hampshire and move anywhere we wanted to in New England. And it wasn't until we had our child that I really started to transition into a different mode of thinking. And getting to your question about Portland, I'll say that we were in Maine. We had a beautiful house. It was exquisite. And 2 gay gentlemen from New York had built it, and they designed it impeccably. And I thought, wow, this is it. I took over this house. People are going to love me. They're going to say, look at you. Look at you. And nobody did. No. And then I was a slave to that house. And so one day in the winter, I had enough. I think I didn't install a baby gate properly upstairs because I was like designing a baby gate because I didn't want a plastic baby gate. And my son had fallen down the stairs. And I had a million things to do. And I said, fuck this. And let's put the house on the market. And we moved to LA in the winter. And it was like when Dorothy goes to Oz. We were in black and white in the winter in New England, and we woke up in that Technicolor splendor of LA. And we're having breakfast on this. I'm like, this is fucking amazing. And we got in with a bunch of crazy people, artists and actors, and had a blast. But then I said, this isn't real life, at least not for a 3-year-old. And we visited Portland, and Portland will blow you away when you visit it.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It will blow you away.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And the pictures don't do it justice. You see Mount Hood in the background. You're like, and it looks industrial and whatever. And then when I went, we were like whispering to each other, like, holy shit, how can we move here?
Yeah.
So we did.
Have you seen the, oh God, it's Portlandia. It's like the dream of the 90s is alive. Yeah. It is. It's like, it's beautiful. And you're like, oh, my youth, all the dreams of my youth are here.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. And then those dreams turn into nightmares because you meet those people and you go, wow, what phony baloney pieces of shit sometimes, honestly. They call it the Seattle freeze, which goes down to Portland, where people are just, honestly, some of the worst people I've ever met in my life.
I say the same thing, and I didn't notice it. I grew up in the Northwest. I lived around Seattle area for my whole life. I finally moved to Colorado about 6-7 years ago, and I would cry sometimes about how nice people were here. Like it was like breaking through my shell, and I was just like, oh my God, what is it? It's the sun. They don't have the sun there.
I totally agree with you. Totally agree. Because when I don't get sun, which we talked about during our call, I believe, I go into vitamin D deficiency / emergency, and I turn into a nightmare. And I always think I have cancer every winter. And my wife's like, you don't have cancer, you idiot. You
You
know,
think this every winter.
totally. So yeah, we moved there and it was great in so many ways. As I said, you know, you can ride your bike to the coolest things, the best food. And the Mount Hood, a conical volcanic mountain, is just an hour away. It looks like something out of Lord of the Rings there. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
But I've talked to some people there that are into the dark arts, and they said it is a place that attracts people like that.
Huh.
And so, yeah, we lived there for 6 years. And well, if I can backtrack real quick, back in Maine, we had our son, like I said, and we were doing all the things that a lot of parents do, being very diligent and careful about everything we pick out for him. But then when it came to healthcare, yeah, we tried to do a midwife birth in the hospital, but then there was an emergency C-section. And it wasn't until that attending pediatrician was harassing me about vitamin K, the vitamin K shot.
Ugh.
And I said, he was not delivered vaginally, so there's not going to be ruptured capillaries and arteries. So what are you talking about? And he's getting really upset. And, you know, I don't know at the time that they have to follow the standard of care, which is a bunch of bullshit. And I said, dude, you got to get away from me. My wife's, 15 feet away, cut open. My son was born not alive. He was blue.
Oh, God.
It took 3 times to kickstart that heart, like a Motley Crue song. And eventually it did. But it was terrifying. The midwife even gave me a look like, oh man, I don't know what's going on. And I was like, holy shit. But, that vitamin K thing was a bellwether event, if that makes sense, if that's an appropriate term. And then we experienced other things like that. We had a midwife who said, you should really bring him to a specialist. He's speech delayed. And we're like, oh shit, really? Brought him to the specialist and they go, oh no, he's actually super smart. He just gets everything he wants through gesticulation. And that's pretty much the last time we brought him to the doctor. Now he's 13.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So
I love that person was astute enough to notice that.
You
know what I mean? Like it takes a level
agree.
of intelligence to be like, oh no, he's fine. It's actually just that like you guys are so aware of what he means and what he wants that he doesn't need to go further than this.
Yeah, or worse, and say he needs this medication. He needs to be tested for hearing. She was a really cool lady, actually, and it freed us in many ways. And so that began a journey for us, which took basically 13 years.
Wow.
And in Portland, we did some of the things that you're expected to do. We put him in public school for the first year. We can talk about that. If you want to talk about that later, that is fine too, because that's a whole conversation. As you know, with your background, it was absolutely bananas. I couldn't believe it.
Well, let's talk about it.
All right.
Yeah. I just, it's hard for me now because I'm very empathic and I can sense people's feelings and what's going on and like the spiritual energies around them. And also I know the harm of this system. We just like are expected, like you said, to just use and do and know it's great. And like, why wouldn't you? And you're a weirdo and your kids aren't going to be socialized and all of this. I was working out today and they have the gym daycare and this little toddler. I mean, he's like a 1 in 3 months, maybe is my guess. This little tiny toddler is like watching his mother leave him and like banging on the glass and screaming. And she's just like, bye. And I was like, I'm maybe a judgmental bitch, but fuck you. Like that kid is your baby. He's screaming for you and you're just walking away.
I can't believe what we do. And I have a quick aside on that because in LA, everybody says you got to put them in preschool. Otherwise they're going to be behind. So we found a preschool that was good enough because, in LA, there's always a wait list. And because all the celebrities want to get their kids into a great preschool. So we got into one in Hollywood and the woman who ran it, she was a total bitch. And when I showed up with the form, my wife she did me dirty. She sent me with the forms. They weren't filled out. When I got to the office, I was like, I got to fill these out. And she's like, oh, she gave me tons of attitude. That's when I should have said, forget this.
Yeah.
You do not get my son. I did it. When I went to drop him off for the first day, my son and I are very attached. I've been the stay-at-home parent. All my clothes have holes in them because I carried him for like 6 years. Every time, up daddy. I'd carry him everywhere and I loved it. And we still have a close bond. But When I went to drop him off there, he was devastated. Devastated. There was another dad, I will call him an LA hotshot, drops the kid off, kid screaming, literally takes him by the forehead, goes, "You'll all right, you'll be all right," and shoves him down to the ground.
Oh my God.
So I'm driving home in the car, I'm looking at myself in the rearview mirror, and then I go, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Oh.
Turned around, grabbed him. I said,
Oh.
"Dude, I am so sorry." He's crying so much on the way. I'm like, "I'm so sorry." He goes, through tears, he said, "That's okay, Dada." And I'm like, "Oh my God,
Oh.
what am I doing?" So yeah, I've seen it a million times. And if we had our child now, we wouldn't relinquish the care of him to anybody. Why would we?
Anybody.
Why would we?
Yeah.
We hired some real dipshit babysitters over the years just because you need to get out, you think.
Right.
It's just like, bring your kid with you.
I know. That's why I was like, you can't actually work out with your kid. Your kid will love it. It'll be an extra weight, right? You'll be like getting even stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, your kid can do almost anything with you. There's a episode I did with Sophia Smallstorm where she was talking about these tribes, that are still living what we would call like primitive or savages or whatever. And, they don't leave their children anywhere for a second. Their children are attached to them all the time. They go everywhere together. They do everything together. This is actually part of the child's education too.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did attachment parenting during his youth when he was, toddler. And it helps to counteract those attachment issues. Like I would say I'm anxiously attached and my wife's avoidantly attached and our son is perfectly attached.
Yeah.
It really does work because at the beginning, it seems like you're being overprotective, but he just feels safe. And then he wanders a little bit more and he looks, you're still there. So he comes back and then a little further. And now we're getting into the stage that he's 13. We are keeping him away from other kids his age, pretty diligently, pretty almost religiously because of the bad influence. And so it never ends. I don't think it ever abates. I would rather him being socialized by us than by some random kid who's on his phone and has access to porn and alcohol.
Right. And there's more trauma waiting, right? So you've avoided so much trauma by allowing him to find safety. By the way, when we feel safe eternally, we're such confident, powerful beings. Like nothing can stop us. This is the best way to be raised. I was looking at this toddler today and I was like, there's the abandonment issue. It just started. I mean, if this hasn't already been done for years to him or whatever, but this is when people tell me too, like, well, I don't have trauma in my life. I was, raised fine. We have both my parents and we had enough money and all of this stuff. I'm like, oh, you have trauma. I mean, like none of us were raised right. Very few of us, I should say, were, because we were all raised in that way where we were dropped off somewhere, told that it would be fine, exposed to porn too early, all sorts of chaos.
Yeah, we might be the worst generation for that. Worst nutrition in human history, although they claim it's the best.
Yeah.
Right. Growing up on grains and pesticides and the inverted food pyramid.
Yeah.
And then we were all jettisoned to government indoctrination camps and after school programs. And our moms were encouraged to leave us. And it's not a sob story, but it's not the way to live. And
it's not producing good results.
Exactly. That's the truth.
Yeah.
No, nobody.
Like we're fine. You could say we're fine. Fine isn't good enough. We should be thriving. We should be beautifully empowered, thriving people, and we aren't. And it isn't a sob story. They didn't know better, and they were also not raised perfectly. But this fake, shallow, processed world not doing us any favors. So your son's probably like one of the healthiest people that we could find in the world.
I would say so. We go to the gym 3 times a week and then we play flag football together, NFL flag. I am coaching it now, which I do love because I try to turn young boys into men, right? We no excuses. Everybody's accountable. If you drop the ball in practice, you got to give me 2 push-ups, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what I love the most about that is because so many people, you alluded to it earlier, maybe with homeschoolers, is socialization. They say, well, isn't he going to be weird? Isn't he going to be whatever? When I dropped him off at that flag football camp before we joined, I picked him up. They said, wow, he's the best player we have. And he's got so many friends. And I said, well, we just moved here to Arkansas. And they're like, what? And so this homeschooler who's supposed to be awkward made like a dozen friends right away. And he's a baller. And if he's not reading books, then he's destroying people on the football field, but with a great, healthy, wonderful attitude.
Yeah.
And that's what I love the most because, that is the training ground to prove yourself as a young boy, Are you well liked? Can you get the job done? And he can. So thank God.
Yeah. I consistently, I have not yet met a homeschool. I'll throw in Montessori and Waldorf and these things too, because I think they're community based and the parents are usually really involved still, and it doesn't feel like abandonment and it isn't indoctrination as much or whatever. And so I'll throw them in too, but I've never yet met a student who went through that type of education and isn't more brilliant, more capable, more confident, more appropriate, more able to interact with adults. All of these things that you could judge success by, it's better, right?
Much
than
better.
anybody I teach in public school.
If you do it the right way. And when we were in Portland, we met a homeschooling family. It was just the dad. He owned, of course, because it's Portland, he owned I can't think of the name right now, but when you pot plants and you do it creatively, he had a whole shop devoted to that. And his son worked there. And when his son checked us out at the end of the purchase, rang us up on the register, I couldn't believe that he was probably 13, 14, how mature, how competent, eye contact. He said he takes the train into the city twice a week with his friends to go to the art museum. Couldn't believe it. That's really one of the things that really inspired us to just take control of our own child.
Yeah. We're better socialized actually, just because they're a whole human who feels good about being a human.
It is startling. I will say there's an ice rink here in town. It's really charming. And a kid on my team is a Mormon, and they invited us to a skate with all Mormons. And I was absolutely floored by how immature those kids were.
Yeah.
Manic, out of control, maniacs, and hypersexualized. Like chanting like these. I won't get into details, but I was shocked, but also I was reaffirmed in our choices.
Yeah. This is interesting too, because we might think from the Mormon community that we would have something of higher quality and standards and a higher output. And there you go. It's similar in quality.
I would think so. And I have my theories on that, but I'll keep them to myself for now.
Fair. So, you weren't totally out of this sort of mainstream lifestyle living in Portland and maybe other places. And then what caused you to go kind of off the rails even more?
Okay. Yeah, I guess we can get back to the public school experience.
Oh, right. Yeah, let's go there.
So put him in the public school and, you do the things. You smile, you say, hey, honey, you get all excited. We didn't tell him Santa was real because we're like, we're not going to lie to you and then break your heart and create that disconnect for you and make you wonder what else we're lying about. Yeah. But we did it with public school because you do it and you go, oh, you're going to have so much fun. And I dressed him all up and like did his hair. These are the things I don't. Now I buy his clothes at Walmart and we don't even cut his hair because I'm like, it's so fucking stupid. He doesn't care. Yeah. And so it's one of the best, quote unquote, schools in Portland. It's called Abernathy. It's in this Lads Addition, this beautiful neighborhood. You can see it's tree lined. It's beautiful. It's really close to the city, but everything's fine. I guess he would come home from school, not want to talk to me ever. How was school? You use that voice like, how was school? All the parents do that. And the kids are like, fuck off. Yeah. So it wasn't until I'd volunteer there once a week. I'd feel really nervous when he wasn't around because I have no idea what he's being exposed to. Yeah. Then you go there and you're treated like you're visiting a prisoner because you have to go to the office, you check in. They're polite to you, but God forbid you raise any concerns. Then they're like, fuck off, Mm-hmm. So I like the teacher. She's down to earth. She's one of these teachers that had been working there for maybe a decade and a half. And she knew what was up, but she knows where her pension's coming from at the same time. Right. Anyway, I would say volunteer session number 5, all fucking hell broke loose. This little girl picked up a chair. Now she looked like something out of a magazine, like the cutest little girl you can imagine, who had the biggest demon inside of her you could ever imagine. And it came out. And she picked up a chair and said something like, now this is a 6-year-old. I'm going to start busting some fucking heads, right? The teacher turns to me and goes, go get the principal. And I said, me? I said, she was panicked. And I said, okay. I ran out, got her. She was trying to bring that stool down on people's heads. And they got most of the kids out of there. They spent the rest of the day in the library. while that little girl went nuts, and they couldn't touch her, of course. And then at the end of the day, I'm a parent in that school. I didn't receive an email, so nobody knew that they spent the whole day there. So then I got on the teacher's good side because I was helping her out, and I'm going, oh, and then she goes, I go, Wendy, I said, this is fucking bananas. I got to tell the parents. She goes, do it. And I said, me?
Do it.
Why do I have to tell them? You tell them. She's like, I can't. I said, fuck. So I ride for a little bit. And then there's other things going on in there too. There's like a little cubby hole because the school was built in like the late 1800s or early 20th century. I don't know. But there's this weird little cubby hole, maybe where they used to put wood or something for fires. I don't know. But there's this weird little kid in there who, like, you know, whips his penis out occasionally. And they keep him in this little dirty cubby hole.
God damn it.
I'm like, what the fuck? It's like that movie, The People Under the Stairs. It's like creepy.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of things like that. There's like 5 kids in there that you're creep radar. It's not their faults, but there's some shit going on at home.
Yeah.
And you go, this is a fucked up family. And I keep my son there. And so I'll make this as quick as I can about that part. But eventually it got so bad that I did email the parents. And it feels weird. Like, hey, 38 people that I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, this is what's going on. And when I booked a meeting outside of the school on a Saturday, I got like a 13% attendance rate. And I go, holy shit. And it reframed my worldview. It's like that Hitchcockian camera technique where you zoom and pull away at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was like, why on earth, if you're a parent, would you not come to this fucking meeting knowing that a girl tried to brain your kid with a stool?
Yeah.
And one of the parents who showed up said, oh, that's why I had a note in my son's backpack that said, sorry about the stool.
Sorry about the stool. Oh my God.
So
just this archaic note. You're like, I'm not sure what this is.
Yeah. Some cryptic thing that she didn't follow up with. And then this school is one of the best schools, quote unquote. There's only a principal. There's no vice principal. There's not a single aide in the room. And some of the 4th grade classes have 34 kids in there.
Is this good? Yeah. Like what?
It's insane.
It's insane.
And then my wife and I attended like these DEI workshops once a month at the school because our son's half Korean. And it was as you expected. Like we would come up with action items, and then my wife's like, well, let's actually, you know, bring these action items to the school. Right. Yeah. And they're like, oh, we can't. And it's just a bunch of virtue signaling horseshit. Yeah. And it's unsafe.
Unsafe.
And there's no fence around the school. And at times I would go there. There's needles everywhere, hypodermic needles everywhere. Right before the first day of school, found one, knocked on the secretary's window. She opens it up like I'm at a drive-through. She's like, oh, hey, Mark. I'm like, here's a needle. And she's like, oh, I'll take that. Takes it and puts it in a bin. And just to give you the whole picture, I'll give you one more quick thing because you have to know the whole scope. Yeah. So occasionally you would go there after school. And once we pulled Sam, my son, he would go and play after school on the playground with the other kids. I played football with the kids. But there would often be homeless people there. Leaning up against the kindergarten building one day, there was a homeless woman with her pants down and her vagina hanging out. And she's trying to shoot up in her ankle. And I said, this is a school, sweetheart. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Right. And then just did it anyway. God. And then another day I arrived on the scene. There was a homeless guy just punching the school till his knuckles were raw and the blood was dripping down the school. Oh. And I said to a bunch of dads standing by, I said, well, how long has this been going on for? They're like, about an hour. I'm like, what are you doing? And kicked him out of there. So it's just, when you live in Portland, Portlandia does not do it justice. Yeah. It is
not bizarre. Even close to the reality. Yeah.
It's lunacy. Yeah. Lunacy. And we still stayed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I think it's really great actually for people to hear this. Because people see that, people feel that to various degrees, and they're like, this doesn't seem right. But also we all have this potential to say, like, everyone's doing it, so I guess it's okay. Yeah. Right. We have this level of group psychology, and it's not, I hope we don't have guilt or shame around it, because it is actually normal to expect that the people around you in general do have an idea of what's going on, and that it is actually okay if everyone's doing it. There is some level of say, but it's not true anymore. We do live in an insane culture now, and it is no longer true that we can trust that. So we really have to be aware of our ability to go along with things that seem like they're probably okay just because enough people are doing it. We all have it. Yeah.
Yes. And that's, you hear that kind of mentality. That's what led people to different concentration camps or whatever, just saying, okay, we're going to go along with it. And I'm sure things will work out okay. But we realized at a certain point that we were being actually bad parents by living there.
Yeah.
That it's not safe. And, one more quick story is that I showed up on the scene one day and the principal was out of the office for once. And my friend Doug, who's like-minded, he lived two houses down, kind of crassly said, I wonder why her fat ass is out of the office, because she didn't do anything ever. She just sat in the office and did nothing. And she said, oh, well, there's a guy down the street. He's got his dick out and he's masturbating, so I can't let the kids out. And we said, we're on it. Hopped on our bikes like we're 12, and we took off after this guy. Come across a mailman on the ground. He's like, are you looking for that crazy naked guy? I said, yeah. He said, he just attacked me. And we tried to chase him down. We couldn't find him. Oh, we found a huge stash of pornography where he was living at the church. Nasty pornography, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We get back to the school 20 minutes later. She released all the kids and the school's empty. She just said, I'm just going to let him go. So.
God, the danger.
I know. It's literally insane.
Insane.
But what I have learned too is that kind of thing isn't unique to Portland, Oregon.
No.
I think a principal's primary job is to shield the district from liability.
Yeah.
Yep. And my brother's a principal, so.
Yeah. And again, it's like you said, like people know where their pension's coming from, even if they have an awareness or they have it's very rarely that there's people, I think I'm an exception where I was like, oh no, I have my own ideals and system. And as soon as they're not met, like I'm gone. I don't give a shit about this job. It's cool. I like it for now. And then when it was too much, I left. Right. But most people don't feel like they have that level of freedom. In fact, most people, no matter what their job is, don't feel like they have any level of freedom to change their life or to see things differently or to not go along with the stream. And this is actually why I like your story too, because that is actually hard to do no matter what sort of level you're living at, right? To see things and to say like, actually what I feel and what I need are more important than whatever I think security or false sense of, group acceptance I think I'm getting from this job or this situation. There's something more important than that. I think it's really good that people hear things like this and see things like this so they remember they too can be free.
Yes. And one thing, kudos to you for doing what you did, because when a teacher has those hours and working with kids is fun and you get the pension, you get summers off. It's very, very hard to extricate yourself from that. So I've always had admiration for you for doing that.
Well, thank you.
I think that's why the show is called Chronic Conundrum, the podcast, because that's the biggest thing of my life with my wife is taking myself out of those systems of control. It's like Stockholm syndrome. You end up being in those places that you hate, you loathe them. They make you sick. Sometimes they make you want to die via asteroid. And for some strange reason, it's one of the hardest things to do.
Yes.
Is to pull yourself out. And that's why we're teaching our kid not to be in them to begin with.
Yeah.
Hopefully he has a head start.
Yeah. Well, and people will say things too, like, oh, that's lucky that you could. It's not lucky.
Oh,
it's not luck. I had to go hard and like, how am I going to do this? And what am I going to cut out of my life so I don't have to pay for that anymore? How am I going to reduce all of my belongings so that they could fit in a van and I could go anywhere I want? Like, how am I going to totally shift everything that I do every single day in order to meet my own needs and my own ideals of freedom and happiness? Nothing lucky about it, and I'm not living high on a horse over here. I mean, right. So someday maybe cool. Yeah, I'll take it. But like, that's not where I was headed. I was just headed to anything that isn't a trap for my soul.
Absolutely. Yes. And when people say that, it's obnoxious. I agree. And we have, you know, if when we were living in that beautiful house in Maine and driving like a BMW and going to Europe, and you had told me that in 10 years I would be living in an apartment in Arkansas, I would have said, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
You
How
know?
did I crash so
Yeah.
hard? Right.
How many limbs are you missing?
Yeah.
Right. Do you have to operate the chair with a straw? I'm like,
Yeah.
this is insane. But it is, you know, we know exactly how much money we need to live.
Yep.
And my wife is really, we can talk about this, you know, later in the show, but she is gearing us up for an even bigger change. And last summer we did a test run. We did 2 months in Europe with just backpacks, and we pet sat at different places throughout England, and then stayed with people we knew. So we got a real experience. You know, we're staying in English villages like Winchester and Marlborough, and had that experience of living in an English person's house, taking care of their pets, walking around, using their Wi-Fi to see if we can live that way.
And I want to emphasize for people, because they think that you can't do things unless you're rich. I think you and I are proof that like you can go anywhere in the world and you can see anything you want without having much or any money. This is one way that you're describing right here of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not paying to stay somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You're at least getting it for free, or maybe even being paid to stay there.
Absolutely. And our credit card paid for most of the flights. We put everything on our credit card. And then, yeah, the sitting is all free. And then we only went to grocery stores and we allowed ourselves one meal out a week.
That's perfect.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that is perfect because we don't go out to eat anymore anyway. I think that's all part and parcel with, you know, taking control of your life.
Yeah.
You say, why would I want anybody to cook for me and mark up the price? And, you know, there's that ratio of they're going to save as much money as possible by using poor quality ingredients.
Low quality. Yeah. Seed oils and
exactly.
really shitty meat. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're always, it's exhausting, but I feel like I look pretty good for 47. So we must be doing the right thing, because I feel like a lot of people who are doing the normal routine, a lot of times they look really, really bad.
Yeah. Oh, you don't look a day above 33. And now I just triggered everyone to think that we're both Illuminati, but, you know, you have the life force energy strongly, right? You're still attached to your soul. You're still aware of yourself. You're still feeling that drive for life, which is the opposite of wanting to be killed by a meteor. And I actually think that animates, you know, our beauty and our health more than any other aspect could. You know, it's still important to eat right and get exercise and all those things. But if you don't have that like strength of love for life and will to live, like you're already going to look like shit. You're already going to start falling apart.
Absolutely. And that is the one thing, if I can circle back to the sleep demon real quick.
Yeah.
And my interpretation of that, at first I was terrified of him. I said, you're not taking my soul. I got a crucifix. I'm shouting things. I'm saying it before bed. I'm waking up. I'm declaring my allegiance to God. My wife the whole time is like, no, you're misinterpreting this. And I have to say, he's never hurt me. And then I watched the podcast about revenants, where a part of the soul gets cleaved off. This is often what is involved in hauntings, where it's just a part of somebody's soul. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking like, oh, this is poor, sad little Mark going, oh, I want love. And I'm like, I'll bring you back into the fold, my little man. Come on. But then the other night I had one where I finally gave in. I said, okay, you can take me. I get out. He's floating me out of the bed, which is terrifying, you know, to be in your underwear in the moonlight, not knowing if you're asleep or awake. And you're levitating out of the room. Yeah. And then I tried to ask him questions. And he's like, dude, Jesus, just shut up. You're not ready. I'm just trying to show you something. And so in that episode, I found a tape, or had a tape. And I have a tape of myself when I'm 4. And so I played it and I got to hear, you know, what I was like when I'm, you know, just after I'm pre-verbal. So maybe as close to who I really am as I can get.
Yeah.
Because those of us born in the 70s, it's like, you don't have shit. I don't have any of my video of myself on tape. This is an audio tape. And he sounds like a little boss, you know, he sounds like a boss. And so now I'm thinking that shit, this revenant is really that boss version of me that I've locked away through social conditioning. And he is trying to say, dude, I want out of this fucking prison.
Yeah.
You got to wake up and let's fucking go.
Yes.
So I think he's trying to show me, like, and I'm like, and even if I don't get to go on that journey, he's already shown me that it's like The Sixth Sense, when he realizes he's dead And I go, oh, this revenant doesn't feel bad for me. I mean, I don't feel bad for the revenant. The revenant feels bad for me.
Yes. Like, oh, you poor thing, you're trapped here. You're still not woken up to who you really are. I love that too, your little boss, and I think we all had a stronger sense of our sovereignty when we were closer to source, when we had just arrived here. And it gets beat out of us. Again, even if you think you had no trauma, great life, everything was cool, everything's good. No, the system is psychopathy. And the psychopathy's job is to either make you also a psychopath or beat you into submission, into codependency. You don't have any other option in the system. And so you have lost yourself to some degree, or you're in this process of waking yourself up, doing the shadow work, getting integrated back to who you really are, and living in your truth and your authenticity. And hopefully we're infecting more and more people to do the same. Infecting might not be the best feeling word, but
Yeah, inspiring, but
inspiring.
Also infecting to a certain degree because it's very uncomfortable for them. So if you implant that mind virus they don't want to hear it.
That's true.
And it might take a while to maturate or to germinate and then maturate. Excuse me for one quick second.
Yeah.
My son was sick yesterday, so.
Got a little purifying going on.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. Yeah. And, one thing I've learned through everything that's happened in the last 5 years, I don't like to even name it, but we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I view it as a blessing. At first, of course, it was a curse, but that is the inciting incident in our story arc that drove us out of Portland finally. And thank God.
Yeah.
Because we never would have left. And, I need my vitamin D. And in Portland, you don't get none of it from mid-November, the rains come, and you don't get it back until June or July.
Yeah. You got like 3 months at best.
Oh, it's the worst. You always have a cold. And so, and my son was starting to make best friends with these twins. And they are great for him. They're wonderful kids, the best kids we've ever met for our son. But they go to public school. They have phones and they're always gaming. And so it would actually have been a net negative in the long run, the longer he stayed. So when that happened and Portland went crazy, we were
the craziest of all the crazy. Yeah.
Dude. Oh my God. And right away, people like us, I said to you in our call, I said, I think the common denominator for the people who saw through, I'll just say it, COVID, were the people who have experienced trauma. So trauma can be a gift because I was like, I know what these fuckers are trying to do to me. Yeah. I've experienced manipulation in my life and control. Mm-hmm. And so when my grocery store immediately had those little circles to line up on, like a day after, I was like, this doesn't make any fucking sense.
None.
So I lined up. And then when I would get to the door, Portland went bananas. As you can imagine, they had a whole crew disinfecting all the carts. Only 30 people were allowed in the grocery store at one time. It took 45 minutes to an hour and a half to get into the store.
Oh my God.
I would get up to the front of the line, finally in that circle with my at that time he was, 8 or 9. And the Gestapo girl at the front, some deputized millennial with coveralls, would say, give me the rundown on the rules. And I'm like, I know the fucking rules. I was here yesterday. We don't have a car. I have to come every day.
Yeah.
And she said, well, you can't bring your son in here. Only one family. I'm like, if you don't get the fuck out of my way, I'm going to shove you. I'm going to shove you over. Like in the 80s.
For my life right now.
Dude, in the 80s, I would think like an Arnold Schwarzenegger like character would just like shove her out of the way and say, get the fuck out of my way. What are you talking about?
This isn't even a problem.
Oh my God. But I obeyed. But, there was this overwhelming sense of urgency to get out of there because, there were the riots that were going on that everybody knows about. But, everyone said, defund the police. And so the whole city was just chaos, murders and shootings. And my neighbors got into a gunfight. A homeless guy got stabbed down the street at the train. Oh, no, sorry. A homeless guy stabbed a civilian, we'll call him, to death at our train stop.
Good God.
So we get out of there. We get out of there and we move back to New England. And like I said, I consider it to be a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. It sprung you from the trap. It is sometimes we refuse to save ourselves until something forces us to like
Yeah.
buck up, get the will, and like burn it high enough to like get yourself out, or you just crumble even further under it. Like how many people did that whole groupthink thing, right? And they were like, this is what we're doing, I guess. Even people who are like, I know better. It's easier to just go along. Like these are always our two choices, like go deeper in or start to get out.
Oh, it's crazy. And we went to New England after that, and we had to experience it all over again because New England was totally normal. We got back there. You could go to restaurants. You could do whatever you want. We went to see our friends at Thanksgiving or pre-Thanksgiving. And then Governor Sununu put out a mask mandate. And overnight, we had to watch it happen again. Everybody went insane. And thankfully, my wife, she immediately said, let's find the reddest county we can find in the South and move there. And we put our stuff in storage, packed up the SUV, and we took off.
Nice. Yeah. How long did it take? Was it days, weeks, months?
Everything was normal for a while. You know what it was? The inciting incident in this case was on a beautiful day. My uncle, who also lives in Maine, my parents live there. We moved back to my parents' house because we were going to buy a house. And then all the prices shot up to like double. Yeah. And I said, oh my God, we're going to be stuck with my parents. And rent like a shitty apartment in a shitty town in New Hampshire was like over $2,000 a month. I'm like, this is insane. And my uncle came over wearing like one of those duck masks to take a walk outside. And I'm at the window, like peeking through the blinds. I said to my wife, I'm like, pack our bags. We have to get the fuck out of here.
We gotta get out. Everyone's dying inside. Yeah. So you fled, you went, and it wasn't necessarily easy, right?
No. So we went, and then my wife too was working for a really big corporation that we're probably on their platform right now. And we had good money, and they came out with it was like a future policy threatening for vaccines, even for remote workers. And my wife basically immediately quit. So we had zero money. Yeah. We are on a farm in Georgia near the coast, near Savannah, but not Savannah. So it's interesting. And the woman who owned it was a 70-acre farm, and she was a former dancer from America, but lived in Berlin for 30 years, was a dancer who she had made herself through surgery, like Rachel Dolezal, look like a Black woman.
Wow.
She was Irish. So when she showed me a picture one night, because are you familiar with woofing?
Yeah, woofing. Yeah, World Organic something.
I was a part of it. I don't even know. But,
yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, we did it again. We stayed there for free. We slept in a converted goat barn. So we went from living in Portland, renting a house in the nicest neighborhood, one of the nicest neighborhoods in Portland, living in a goat barn. I'm like sleeping on a dirty mattress. There's like dogs barking, running around the property, attacking the cows, and I slept like a log. And this is when everything was super insane. So we're all listening to our podcast during the day to find out like how nuts it's going to get. Anyway, so yeah, we were there for about 2 months. Did I lose the tangent? Am I doing all right?
No, you're great. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm loving it because I'm like, this is totally something I would do as well. If I had I said it, I was like, even if I had a kid, people are like, you have to keep working because you have a kid and you got to whatever. And I'm like, I wouldn't. I'd put him in my van and we'd be homeless if I needed to. Like,
I always say that.
I would go along with any of this shit.
Yep. I always say that. And we were refused. We put our mask on our son in Maine for a while because we couldn't get into the grocery store, but then we stopped doing that. And we said never again. Cause it's almost like sexualized. I'm not muzzling my child to appease you, you fucking sick asshole. Right. It really, as a parent, cause you have no control over your own child at that point.
Yes. And you're basically admitting I'm a slave and you get to do with me and my child as you choose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not on our watch. We'll go sleep in a fucking goat barn. Thank you very much. And it was an amazing experience. Every night she was a wonderful cook. Obviously a bit wacky, but we were growing organic potatoes. It was wintertime. And we would bring him to market, and we'd have one day off a week. We'd go to Savannah, and Savannah was normal.
Yeah.
Restaurants were open. People were in the park playing volleyball. And compared to Portland and compared to New England, I
Yeah.
said, this is such bullshit.
This is heaven, though.
Oh,
People are
heaven.
still free here.
Heaven.
I went to Savannah briefly on my southern road trip, and I loved how cheap and delicious and seemingly real the food was. I was like, I've never actually had food this good in a restaurant for this price.
Totally agree.
I was
Yeah.
amazed. So
I
I don't know. They
agree.
must do a lot of growing and it just goes straight to the restaurants or something. It wasn't even like this is a farm to market restaurant, right? Like in
Yeah.
Portland, it'd be like $80 a plate. Like it was just
Totally.
a regular place.
Yeah. Or they would talk about it incessantly. And yeah.
Mhm.
And then I will say, as far as like pushing through uncomfortability, after that, I wanted to retreat. I said, shit, we got to circle the wagons, figure it out, get our stuff out of storage. And my wife had heard about, all the people in Texas that were flocking to Texas in the resistance, we'll say.
Yeah.
And she's like, we'll go there. And I said, okay. And we went there and we met all those people, like a lot of the people who were in the resistance, a lot of people that have popular podcasts. And we had a whole community there. And we did that for about a year and a half, looking at land together with people that you might know and doing all these super fun parties and at celebrities' ranches. And we met up with this one group that was I don't want to say the name in case anybody can Google this, but it was a whole group dedicated to kind of freedom. And there were like there were judges there. There were a lot of influential people there.
Wow.
And so that whole experience was amazing too. But ultimately we learned like, we can't trade our independence for the power that we're going to get through a collectivism.
Yeah.
There's too many compromises when you're trying to establish, say, an off-grid community with people.
Right.
We had so many meetings. And so basically what I'm trying to say is we have pushed forward so many times over the years. And I just realized now, and my wife, she knows this, it's just, I don't think it's ever going to stop.
Yeah.
Nor should it.
Right. Right. The growth and the transformation and like where you're going to go next and how you're going to do it. And I think when we start looking for the thing that's going to be the permanent and the forever and the now it's this way and here's my, pattern, my system, it's like, well, that's when we, again, probably start to die a little bit more, start to let go of some of our values and ideals. And actually life is constant change. I'm not saying you have to always live in chaos and constantly be moving necessarily, but to not necessarily want to look for the constant comfort and the constancy itself is perhaps like a little bit more enlivening.
Yeah, there's a real trade-off, as we know, from that comfort. And I think we get, millions of examples a year when somebody retires.
Yeah.
And they have no more purpose and they're eating dinners and, they don't last very long.
Yeah. Really big downhill slope at that point. Yeah. And I know, the other thing about this type of collectivist urge, like there's nothing wrong with it and you can do it. It can be cool. I've seen it done where we're all going to buy property next to each other. Otherwise we really have no ties to each other. Like we have the ideal that we will help each other. We will share tools. You don't have to. If at any point you say, no, I hate you and I never want to talk to you again, cool. Because we all have our own shit still, right? Like I think that's one of the best ways to do it. But I also, a lot of times in these types of things, it gets infiltrated by agents
I agree.
It gets infiltrated by also people who aren't well. And they're looking for an opportunity to dominate a bunch of people and like force themselves on people and be cluster B and narcissistic. And again, this psychopathic energy like doesn't spare anybody. So you're either healing from it or you're doing it. And a lot of people are still in it, even if they think they've woken up to something or they see the way or right. So like a lot of people in, I'll say our community in this larger, terminology, they're not well. You have to like have this ideal of I'm going to interact with people who are well or on their path to wellness and not other people. Right.
You're very astute and you nailed it. And I had to experience it for a year and a half to come to that determination. But one of the people in this group is pretty well known in the resistance. And yeah, I would say cluster B and the bad kinds of cluster B. Yeah. And it was amazing to witness the behavior. Most people came to the same conclusion after enough meetings with this person to say, but he still had a bunch of sycophants, a collection of weirdos that he had control over.
Yeah.
And
Because
so it is.
people, a lot of people want that. They want the person who will control them and tell them what to do and what to think and
Yeah.
where to go, and that feels safer to them, right? As we're coming out of the system, sometimes that's like what we were trained into and what we want more of, even as we think we're free.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's actually really cool that you saw that and saw through that. Not everyone does.
Yes. And I'm proud of myself that I saw it pretty quickly. And, and then we were able to move. And then after that, just to finish the journey where we're at so far, we went to Oklahoma because of the homes. There's literally no requirements for homeschooling. You just say you don't even have to say it. You just homeschool, and you don't even have to homeschool. And then we're in Arkansas now. And I told you on our last call that I love the shape of that, because if you go LA, Portland, and all the places I just described, then it's like a big spiral, and it is like a Fibonacci sequence. And so
That's so
it
cool.
is beautiful, but I can't let that prevent me from moving on.
Yeah, true. Well, you've traced some sacred geometry into this continent, doing great magic as you do, and then wherever you go next and however you travel, you'll just continue a different pattern.
I'm into that now. Yeah, I can see that.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, so you're homeschooling right now. How is that going? You want to tell us anything about like how you do it?
I would love to. Because the Mormon family that he's our quarterback, this little guy, and he's a phenomenal quarterback. I love what he does on the field, and he's a type A type kid, and he's really smart and hates school.
Mm-hmm.
And so his parents have reached out to me a couple of times saying, we're thinking about homeschooling. And so after 13 years, I would say that it is important not to replicate the school environment in the home.
Yes.
Number one, it is going to be, someone's going to end up in jail, and it's probably going to be you if you're the homeschooler, because it is awful. And of course it is, because like you said about, being a young kid in your power center, then you get into that dynamic where you're saying you must do this boring stuff in a chair for X amount of hours a day. And the kid's like, fuck off. And you're like, when you're being honest, or if you've had enough, you go, yeah, it is fucking bullshit, and I would hate it too.
Yeah.
But again, you're trained to say, well, I got to teach him this stuff. And I will tell you what it boils down to for us. And he just did it this morning. It takes him like 30 to 40 minutes. He does a couple workbooks, so he knows how to do math, and he can write. So his handwriting's really neat, and he can spell. Okay. That's all I really care about.
Yeah.
And then we do a bunch of projects. He's a voracious reader. My God, he checks out like 7, 8, 9 books a week, reads them. He got done with a book the other night. Like at 9 before bed, I said, when did you get that? He closes the cover. It was like 300 something pages. He said, I got it this afternoon.
Oh my God.
I was like, what are you talking about? So that kind of autodidactic nature is something, if your kid is like that, and most kids are,
yes,
you have to foster that above and beyond anything else. Do not make them equate education with drudgery.
Yeah.
So I do make them do the workbooks, but the workbooks end in 8th grade. And let's be honest, any kind of math you need to know is like up to 6th grade. And then the rest of it's fucking stupid.
Right. Unless you want to do something with that. That's great. Right.
Caveat. And then he does creative projects. Like he has a Substack, and he's in the middle of a Harry Potter fan fiction. He's about 250 pages into that. He's a great writer. Cool. And then I think the biggest key is to teach them life skills. And so he's an excellent cook. He is a prep cook, like something out of a magazine. He's a better prep cook than I am. His vegetables are meticulous. He cleans without any fuss, because I think that's true too. If you teach your kid to be, part of the family, pitching in to help out, not paying them to do it. Like this morning, I was trying to get ready for the show and do a bunch of things. And I said, do you want to cook the French toast or start washing the dishes? And he said, oh, I'll wash the dishes. I don't mind washing dishes. And I'm like, dude, we're doing something right.
Yes.
And then of course, the last part is to get outside as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I just heard this a criticism from someone. They were like, can you believe that this person like has their kids in some sort of school where it's like called an outdoor school and they're just
Yeah.
like outside even if it's raining? Like, what are they trying to do to these kids? And I was just like, man, the shift in perspective that needs to happen is massive, because I'm like,
Oh,
that
yeah.
is actually how humans have always learned, is by being in nature, self-reflection, watching other people, watching other animals. This is the best education we could get, actually. And if you told most people that your 13-year-old son has written a 250-page anything, they would not believe you.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd say, how'd you make him do it? And you'd have to go back to the like, well, I don't make him do anything,
Yeah.
right? I invite him to learn, because like you said, all humans have an innate love of learning. It is when we beat it out of them and make them, like you said, associate it with drudgery and force, that they no longer want to do it, and they don't believe in themselves. They don't believe they can do it because some asshole cluster B teacher told them that they were bad at it, or that they couldn't do it, or that there was something wrong with them, and they believed it.
Yeah.
And we killed
For
them
the rest of their lives, they will
the
believe
rest of their
that.
lives. I'm bad at math. Nobody's bad at math.
Yeah, and math is the most beautiful and amazing thing ever conceived. Like, to witness God, like it's a formula for God. You can witness His creation through numbers, right? But they don't teach it that way.
No.
When our son was in Portland, a neighbor who tested for basically the GATE program or whatever it's called now, was like, "Oh, your son's really smart. I'll test him." And I was like, "Okay," because he was in school, and he did. He tested in the 99th percentile, whatever. And then I was advocating for him, because he was bored in class. He was like, anytime I'd show up, he'd be like sprawled out on the floor, so lazy and bored. And it didn't amount to anything, nothing, because they give, as you know, they give all the resources to the lowest 10%. And the top percent get nothing. So literally nothing. It was just in his school record that he was in whatever program. He had no opportunity. And then speaking of outdoor school, once we pulled him, there's an outdoor program. I wouldn't say great, because in retrospect, it's full of the people we mentioned earlier in the Pacific Northwest, right? And one of his teachers was like, "This guy, how's this guy getting hired? I think he's like a barfly, But anyway, I advocated for him to go to a higher group. And that was kind of silly because, he's only at that time like 6, and he's out in the pouring rain trying to build like a lean-to with a bunch of like 10-year-olds. And so, you learn about things that way too. It's like,
yeah. This challenge is difficult. What am I doing here?
Yeah. And he didn't like it. And again, I would also say, it's hard because you do want him to have some exposure to things outside of your purview, I guess. You have to be careful though, obviously. All the stories that come out recently about teachers getting caught for inappropriate behavior, it's rife with that, because of course that industry would attract that type of person, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so even if it's not public school, well, then if it's a private program, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
He does a farm school here. He loves it. And I take him to this farm twice a week. He does alternative types of programs. So he does like, it's weapons and warfare with duct tape. So they make a bunch of duct tape weapons, and at the end they have a big battle.
That's awesome.
Things like that. And he takes care of animals, and they have babies on the farm that they take care of, and they cook up roadkill, and they do all sorts of stuff.
I love this. Yeah.
It's cool. So I do say that. And I said that to the Mormon family. I said, yeah, you should try to find a good program too, to broaden his horizons and to give yourself a break, because as a homeschooling parent, you really do need a break sometime. And I'm not saying to sit around and eat bonbons. What I'm saying is to clean the house in peace, where you don't have to move somebody out of the way. And so you should try to find a good program as well. And we only move to areas actually that do have either, not that we're Christian, but Christian homeschool co-ops or the like outdoor programs, things like that.
Yeah. Well, these homeschool co-ops are so beautiful. And any sort of program like that that's meant to be, I'm going to call it extracurricular, even though it is just curricular when you're a homeschooler. But, those types of programs are really good to have, especially at this age. Once they get into the sort of preteen, teenage years, that is part of their development, right? Is they're going to go out into the world, and they're going to see how they fit into it and work with other people. And so to have something like that is really, really perfect. And when people are struggling with like, I can't homeschool, there's all this and this and this, there are so many ways to do it. There's so many options. And I don't think there's a single human being who can't do it in some way. And all of it's going to be more appropriate than the government indoctrination centers could possibly be, or even the private ones that emulate the same system.
Yeah.
So,
because they still get government funding. They're beholden to FERPA. So you have all these
they still
awkward...
have this, stupid ideology of like, we need to have like 6 periods a day. Like, why?
Yeah, why? Exactly. Replicating like some sort of antiquated factory model, of bells and Pavlovian responses to things. It is actually insane when you pause and think about it. And as they point out in probably one of John Taylor Gatto's books about public schools in a community versus the prison in the community, same contractors, same architects. The only difference is one doesn't have a fence around it. A modern looking jail looks very much like a modern high school.
Yeah. Same food.
Same food, same rec time, have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. It's all that you ride to the building in the same kind of bus. They're just different colors.
Oh, I loved it though. I love some of my students who'd be like, well, why do we even have to do it like this? This is bullshit. And I'd be like, yeah, it is. You're right. This is crazy. And they'd be like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You're supposed to argue for this. I'm like, no, I hate this. This is the worst possible way we could possibly educate you. There's no education in this. You better educate yourself, actually, because this whole system was designed to destroy you.
Wow.
Like, huh? What is she saying? I loved it.
So what was the final thing, the last straw, final straw?
Oh, I mean, the adults are like Agent Smiths. They just all, one after the other after the other. Eventually, it was like this whole, like, every single adult in my school and system was like attacking me, against me. I can't even, people don't even believe the stories I tell them about how bad my last year was and how the adults treated me. It was insane. Here's one brief story that was like the epitome of the horror. I was in my room. I'm a woman. I'm smaller. I'm 5'4", right? I'm not very tall. I think I'm tall and big, but I'm actually not, it turns out. So, I'm in my classroom. It's winter in the Northwest, so it's dark. And, even though it's like probably 6:30 or something, it's like still dark out. And this guy comes in, this teacher, older teacher. He'd been there for much, much, much longer than me, respected by everybody, loved by everybody. Comes into my room, shuts the door. Already, I'm like, wait. But the doors, by the way, automatically lock when you shut them, because this is now like some sort of active shooter thing or whatever.
Right.
So we're locked together in a room. I'm like, well, this is already weird. He comes over to me, farthest from the door you can get. I'm standing at my desk. That's where I put my desk for strategic reasons. And he comes over there. So I'm basically now cornered in a locked room with an old, strong, big, huge man. And he starts yelling at me, which is never appropriate as an adult human being to yell at anybody for any reason, really, unless they're about to kill you or kill someone else, or they think this is not appropriate. Yelling at me and saying, why are you even here? You should just leave. You should just never come back. Why are you even come to this place? If you hate it so much, why are you here? Blah, 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 blah. I was just like, what the fuck, dude? So I just stood there and watched him do this. And then I was like, don't yell at me. Don't come into a locked room with me and corner me. Now leave. And at some point you can apologize to me.
Oh, wow.
Didn't respond to anything else he said. He leaves. I was just like shaking. I was like, I just got attacked by a teacher, And
but what a great response for you in the moment.
Oh, well, thank you. I've been well trained my students over the years to deal with this. I've had crazy parents do similar things too, but that never bothered me as much as my coworkers, right? Doing this to me. So, the reason he was doing that was because I wasn't coming on Fridays. I had already put in my resignation to leave. And on our Fridays, we didn't have students at this school. It was an alternative school. No students at the school. And I had no work to do ever. And I had all of this leave to use up. So I wasn't coming on Fridays. And that's why he came in and screamed at me. And the real reason is that he is mad at me because I didn't fit into their codependent structure, and I didn't bow down to their authority, and I didn't do what they wanted, and I didn't teach kids in the way they wanted. And I wasn't fucking doing their stupid codependent bullshit. So I was a threat, right? So the first chance he had to attack me was because I wasn't coming on Fridays. And in that case, he thought it would be appropriate to scream at me to just never come back at all.
It's
like, this is insane, right? Like and they thought I was the insane one. So like all of these people were doing that and worse. It was crazy. It was craziness. It was like a fucking nut house in this school. And the way I was treated was crazy. And so I was already actually leaving, but that convinced me like, man, if I hadn't already been leaving, like I'd be leaving now. Kids love me. Parents love me. Teachers hate me.
That's a good thing. That's a good place to be.
Right.
In that Venn diagram. It teaches you too that, I mean, a lot of teachers aren't there for the kids. They say they are, but they're not. And when we were homeschooling in Texas, there's that Tim Tebow law where homeschoolers can play in public school sports. It is, but it isn't, because in Texas is king for football. And when I emailed the schools with that information, they never emailed me back. I emailed 5 different people, like principal, secretary, board of trustee, everybody. Nobody responded. Now I could flex and say, this is federal policy. You better fucking answer my email. But then I'm like, what am I doing? I'm saying this kid wants to participate in a program and nobody's getting back to me. Yeah. So why would I want him involved in that program?
True. If they're already responding in this way, they clearly aren't going to do well with my kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I say it's their loss.
Yeah. No, I feel the same. I actually feel bad. I had this huge amount of guilt leaving children in general to those psychopaths, right? Mm-hmm. Like my whole purpose in going in was to be one adult who was not a psychopath to them, and that maybe could actually help them have some level of independence and freedom from this system and the system of thought. And leaving that, I was like, well, now who's doing that? I never met a single teacher doing it the whole time. 14 years, I was the only one I know of doing anything like that. And there we go. Like, who's left to buffer them? But I had to realize also that I paid my dues, so to speak, and my life was also important.
Yes. And I think what we learned with COVID is that it's not your responsibility and you can't do it.
Right.
Because the parental societal influence is such that you can't really counteract it. It's like a tidal wave of misinformation.
Yeah. And you can still counteract it if you can at all, in the same way that any of us can, which is just by being your authentic self in any setting, anywhere, anytime. So it's enough, actually. It's more than enough. And yeah, I'm glad I got to heal a lot of guilt complex, actually, which was a big part of why I went into teaching in the first place. I found out, right? I didn't know that, but this was my, like, I have to save them or who will, right? Like, and if I don't, then who is? And like, this is all guilt and fear related. It's not actually technically motivated by love and authenticity, which it should be if it's ideal, right?
What a honest interpretation, honestly. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, I think we're all on this similar journey, right? Of like finding our truest self and of healing these wounds that we were given by this sick society, and then by freeing ourselves in the ways we can, and by promoting it in the ways we can, and whatever we're doing is rippling out in some way. Again, maybe infecting isn't the best word, but rippling out, inspiring, right, is the thing. And you and your family are doing this in really beautiful ways too, which I love. So do you talk about this on your podcast? Is this the subject? Do you go into other areas, or what's it all about?
Yeah, I would say, I just refined what it's about. Before I was just saying it's like waxing philosophical for strangers on the internet. But now it is about getting to that capital T truth through storytelling and societal critiques and dream analysis, because of the internal state being the most important thing. And so, yeah, my Substack before that and other things. I made a website. It wasn't preachy, but it was more like, hey, here's what we do, and you should do this, you should eat that. And I was like, I don't even like writing about it because I wouldn't want to motivate people. It's like my friend who is very muscular and knowledgeable up in Canada, super knowledgeable guy. He's like, I would never want to train because I don't want to motivate people. Like I would like 10% of my clients. And so with my podcast, I try to make it more entertaining, and I use it as like a vehicle for self-exploration. If I said this at the beginning of the show, I apologize, but it can replace therapy. It can replace so much doing that self-analysis. And so for me, it is also it's a good opportunity for me, as I alluded to earlier, where I am the one that had trouble moving to Georgia and moving on to Texas and moving forward in general, where my wife is a bit more fearless because of what she's been through already, trafficked out of a country. She could either collapse in on herself or just keep pushing, right? And she has made a lot of strides over the years doing her own podcast. And so I try to keep my podcast light, particularly at the beginning. Yeah. And then I try to weave together all the topics in the last 5 minutes to come to come to bring it together with an overarching message of inspiration, I hope.
Yeah. This is actually the type of podcast I lean towards more and more because I am sick of information overload. I'm sick of I get all of the problems. There's not a single problem I don't understand deeply in the whole world. So I don't need more of here's the problem, here's the problem, here's the problem. I need more of this. Here's a trip, sad, beautiful, happy, whatever. But here's this journey, here's this story, here's this ability to self-reflect and ability to be present as a human. And I just think that's really cool to have more content like that. I found some, maybe not quite the same, but I think the same flavor at least a while ago, and maybe they still do it, but it was called The Moth Podcast, and it was an NPR thing.
Yeah.
And before it was sort of agenda driven and preachy, it was beautiful. And it was just people telling random stories about their life. And I really loved that too, for the same sorts of reasons. So I feel like this more, still genuine, still authentic, still has this liberty sort of flavor or whatever, truth flavor, but also more personal, true, I guess, down to earth. And I just like that a lot. So I think it's cool you're doing this. This is Chronic Conundrum, and people can find it on anywhere podcasts are served. We're going to put a link below to where they can go find that if they want to use the link. And also you have your email to share for people to just contact you too. So is there anything else you want to share about how people can connect with you, or where or why? Is your Substack still something you do? Anything else you want to throw out?
My Substack would be, but I tried to find it through a search the other day and it didn't work. So that's okay. I think the podcast is my best. Isn't that funny? Yeah. It didn't show up in search results. So my podcast is the best way to reach me, and my email is in the show notes every week.
Oh, perfect. And it'll be in these show notes too. So right below, wherever you're watching or listening to this, you'll be able to connect with Mark of Chronic Conundrum. And Mark, what are your final thoughts you want to leave people with?
I would say, and it piggybacks on what you were saying about you don't want to hear about different problems anymore. And the problems are such in the near future with the Hegelian dialectic that there's going to be problem after problem after problem with these predetermined solutions. Everybody has to be cognizant of that whatever is presented to us over the next 8 or 10 years as a solution probably is by design. And so you can't even listen to any of that. It's a distraction. If anybody's talking about problems and they're allowed to talk about the problems, they're probably not authentic people. And so the only thing that I would suggest, and I'm going to talk about on my podcast this week, it's all about empowerment, of empowering yourself to push forward through discomfort, through your own fear, not the fear that they put you under, so that you can break through to something better for you and your family.
Beautiful. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog electric concentric dose of wisdom, according to the Rome schooling free man, Mark of Chronic Conundrum. Mark, thank you for being here and for being you.
Thank you very much.
Well, it isn't just that education is broken and doesn't serve humanity and breaks our children into manageable pieces. It isn't just that weaponized compassion has been used against us by psychopaths in order to disempower us and sneak the wolves into the hen houses. It isn't just that corporate technocratic slave state hungers for our minds and hearts to be locked into a 15-minute city grid. It is that we are starved by this psychopathic society and worldview of the thing that nourishes us most, a connection to our soul and to the soul of the universe. The way into that connection is through your authenticity and heart. Be true to you, the rest will follow, and you will have saved all of yourself and all of the world. And until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Bravo.
Grab any pencil, give it potential. I'm heaven essential, get existential. I don't flip flop, I hip hop, and eventually you'll come to see the master of the sentence. I've come to be, come to Beavis, come to Butthead. I want to make the streets flood the blood red. I'm the
sickest, I'm the wickedest. I'm the one you call when you need to flip this, rip this place down to the fucking studs. Blast so bright among all these fucking duds. They sit back thinking that they can rock with me. You like a rookie cause you rock so sloppily, and what you think you got ain't so hot to me. So take it back to the lab for a lobotomy, bitch. What you think you got? You ain't Biggie, you ain't Tupac. Too many MCs on the street right now. Some of them can't take the heat right now. Some of them don't know what hip-hop's about. Aboard your ship and turn it on now.
I'm guessing that's the bad guy?
I'll bust you up with my arms crossed, projecting omega beams. You could wield the meta piece, smoke it faster than bodega weed. Keep dropping the dang shit, we blow the loudest. Dangerous as West Bank housing. Yeah, I'm bloody arrogant, cause I've been tearing shit before rappers mumbled and flaunted their merriment. Virulent resident pointed out embarrassments. When it comes to the masters, I'm pale in comparison. Enough about my tone, call me Yeti or unknown. Using my government can slug us to the fucking dome. Style remains lethal without a reboot or a sequel. You're in our cathedral where nothing is peaceful. Weasels get skinned and hanged up as trophies. I'm one ugly motherfucker when I go full re-roll these cadavers in a rug and dispose of them. Won't see us closing in, watch me explode a sim. Beam this red shirt back to his maker. Leave this dread work to those with the flavor. They ain't feeling what this culture is all about. Aboard your ship and burn a bitch down.